for Tuesday, April 28th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 6:30 p.m. I would ask everybody, wherever you are, to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you have a flag, face it. And if you don't, make like you do.
It'll be on the screen.
Oh, it will? All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Mr. Puntillo, for the flag. Please be advised that adequate notice of this meeting in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, has been provided by action of the Board of Education at its regular meeting on December 10th, 2019. Notices to the Courier News and Star Ledger circulated in the school district and posted notice to this effect on the Board of Education website and building bulletin board, administrative headquarters, 51 West Cliff Street, Somerville, New Jersey. Mr. Boyce, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Miss Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Mrs. Olson.
She's here.
Okay. Mr. Puntillo.
Here.
Dr. Sadin.
Here.
Mr. Kimmick.
Here.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Here.
Mr. Sergio.
Present.
Mr. Jess.
Here.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Here.
Thank you. At this time, we are open to public comment for items related to the agenda. Due to the state of emergency that has been declared in the state of New Jersey and the United States, we are doing these meetings remotely. So we please ask members of the public to bear with us as we venture into this new normal for the time being. Any member of the public who wishes to provide public comment may do so by submitting their comments via the link, which is located on the Somerville Board of Education webpage. And the link is above the live stream on the main page. Once your question is submitted or your comment, Ms. Melissa McEntee will then take them and read them for the board. So I'll ask Ms. McEntee if you have any comments to please pull them up and read them.
Thank you, Mr. Jess. Our first comment on board items only comes from Suzanne Cry, 151 East Cliff Street in Somerville. She writes, "Thank you for placing this option. However, the world has moved to various video platforms. Why can't the Board of Education meetings be done that way? I'm confident parents and others would like to attend in-person live meetings. It would generate questions and comments in the moment. I have attended board meetings through the years when they work within my work schedule and would have liked the opportunity this month. I understand there are issues with various platforms. However, there are some platforms that have better securities than others. I also understand we are making changes and guidance is dynamic. Thank you."
All right. The only thing I would respond to that is I know that there are multiple of video platforms out there. As this is our first attempt at having a rural meeting, I would ask the public to please bear with us. I think Dr. Tian, Mr. Boyce, and Mrs. McEntee have done a very good job, and Mr. Kazar as well as putting this together. And while it might not be optimal for everyone, I would ask you to please bear with us, and we'll see what we can do moving forward to have public join in as well. I know that there are other platforms such as Zoom, which I have used for meetings, which are just as good as the Google platform that we're using now.
Thank you, Mr. Jess. Our next comment comes in from Dennis Sullivan of 8 South Richards Ave in Somerville. He writes, "Given the current economic situation, there is a good chance that local tax revenues will be lower in the coming year. Will the Board of Education use money saved this spring, as well as any new additional state aid, along with available surplus accumulated, to offset any tax increase or loss of revenue to the borough of Somerville if our tax collection rate drops from current levels?"
I would just respond, thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for your comments. I'm sure that the administration will take everything into consideration as we move forward into these unprecedented times. And when the time is right, they will meet with the Finance Committee and the whole board and provide whatever suggestions and solutions that they have.
Thank you, Mr. Jess. As you know, this is a live feed for the document and to submit requests for questions or comments. So we'll just give everyone a moment to see if there's anything else on board items. And if not, then we'll move forward with the remainder of the meeting. It doesn't appear that anything else is being submitted at this moment.
Great, thank you. That being said, may I have a motion to close the public session, please?
So moved.
Thank you,
So
Mrs.
moved.
Van Horn. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sadin. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. What we're going to do, if I may, Mr. Boyce, I think this evening, because we are doing this live streaming and with the delay that we seem to have when people are answering, I think from here on out, we're going to do a roll call for every section of the agenda. So this way, everybody's vote can be heard. And that way we don't have to worry about anybody thinking that their response was not heard or heard the wrong way, if that's okay with you.
That's great. Sure.
Excellent. Okay. So moving on, next is approval of the minutes for the February 18th regular meeting and executive session and the March 17th regular meeting and executive session. May I have a motion on those items, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Dr. Sadin. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Any discussion? Mr. Boyce, roll call, please.
Ms. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Olson,
She's having an issue, but she said yes. She gave the all clear.
okay, Mr. Puntillo,
Yes.
Dr. Sadin,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Sergio,
Yes.
Mr. Jess,
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving on to board presence report. I just want to say that I hope that everybody is out there is safe, is healthy, that their families are doing well, that you're practicing social distancing, even though is a day like today when the weather is nice, it gets a little bit harder. And I'd also like to commend Dr. Teen, Mr. Boyce, and the administration for what they've been doing to help make sure that our students are fed and educated and that the remote learning is going well. I know it's not an easy job, and you guys are really doing a great job, and I just want to thank you very much for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Teen.
All right. So we're going to start off with the NJSLA science presentation. And just so everyone knows, that was pre-recorded and it's been posted on the website in the archive for the Board of Ed minutes, the Board of Ed meeting videos. So if you go there, you can watch it, rewatch it as many times as you want. But that will be for the science test scores. The next item is a student discipline code of conduct committee recommendations. I have a statement to read from Melissa Steger, and she said, each year we need to review the district code of conduct and discuss the code of conduct at the building level. For Vanderveer, they share the code of conduct with staff, students, and parents at the beginning of the year. And they want to highlight that they have done significant work to make the dress code gender neutral. For SMS, the SMS code of conduct is being reviewed, and they have been looking at the Syracuse City School District, which is a national model, and they will be looking to reflect in their code of conduct the current push for restorative practices. For SHS, they have a commitment to look at the gender neutral and bias-free language for the dress code. They are also making shifts to be more restorative with issues such as vaping. And for the district's code of conduct, there are no recommendations to make changes at this time. So that concludes the student discipline code of conduct. And now we're going to move on to the public hearing on the 2020-2021 budget with Brian Boyce and myself. And Brian will be taking over and pushing out his presentation.
Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Boyce. I'm the Business Administrator District, and welcome to the public hearing on the 2021 school budget. As a presentation overview, we are going to talk about budget goals, academic enhancements, general fund appropriations, general fund revenues, long-term planning, which is important because we build annual budgets within the context of a long-term financial plan, and property tax impact. I will reveal now, though, that the school tax rate will increase less than 1% based on the proposed 2021 school budget. This is the mission statement that the Board of Education adopted as a guiding principle. It reads, Somerville schools provide the highest quality education through the environment that promotes individual excellence for all students. That segues into my next slide, which is budget goals. And just for the public's understanding, from the mission statement, the Board of Education establishes a 5-year district strategic plan. After that, the Board of Education sets annual goals in order to achieve that strategic plan. The budget goals that we're going to talk about here connect with those Board of Ed annual goals and that strategic plan. I'm going to run through these pretty quick because we have a lot to cover tonight, and each one of these items, budget goals, are addressed at some point in the presentation. I do want to bring people's attention to the fact that the first few are general budget goals and the last 3 are specific. We started that a few years ago where we identified specific budget goals because the general were things that we were, expected to accomplish, but the specific were specific items that we identified as perhaps areas in need of improvement that we felt reasonably sure that we could accomplish in the budget. So a few years ago, we started splitting up between general and specific. To start off, you have our budget goals, our general. We want to make sure budget's aligned with student needs and instructional priorities. We want to make sure that we offer programs and services that foster educational excellence. We want to make sure that we plan properly for technology support given the explosion of technology in the 21st century. We want to make sure that our budgets are structurally correct and have the correct structural integrity, which is important for us because we're particularly vulnerable to not being structural correct. We want to provide as much property tax rate stability as possible. We want to plan for our capital improvements, which we will talk about tonight. The 3 specific goals is going to be talked about. Dr. Tehan, I'm going to hand this presentation over in a minute to Dr. Tehan. He will discuss academic enhancements that address these 3 specific goals, in addition to other enhancements that we are looking to accomplish in the 2021 budget. But we're looking to address grades 5 through 10 math resources, enhance English language arts instruction, and follow through on an equity audit that was performed last year. Dr. Tehan, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. So breaking it down into 2 different areas, accomplishments and enhancements. The accomplishments are going to be focusing on what we've accomplished during this current school year. The enhancements will be what we hope to accomplish using this budget for the next school year, the 2020-2021 school year. So we're going to start with accomplishments. Mr. Boyce, if you could click it.
Sorry.
So the following is not all of the accomplishments, but it is a short sampling of the many accomplishments we have experienced during this current school year. Probably one of the key ones to focus in on to start off with is that we were able to maintain all academic programs and academies. In an environment where school districts are losing money left and right, this is a huge accomplishment. We are also continuing to provide non-child study team school psychologists in every school building. And these individuals are there to provide mental health supports to all students. And that is a very strong strength for Somerville Public Schools, and one that's been in existence for several years. As Mr. Boyce had already said, we did conduct an equity audit, and this actually showed us how some of our longstanding practices have hindered students having access to opportunities that are available. Also, during this past school year, we've had our first joint Somerville Branchburg Professional Development Day, which was an absolutely huge success. We've also worked on improving communications with the community, and this has been accomplished through the consolidated school messenger notifications, so that parents aren't getting messages, 100 times a day. And we've also created the virtual backpack so that families can go and look up messages that had already went out. Other accomplishments that we've had is improved writing instruction in K-8 using school-wide writing, and in grades 9 through 12 using the Junior University's National Writing Project. That was a goal that we established within the curriculum department years ago, and we have been working tirelessly to achieve that. We also received our first career technical education program, CTE, it's also referred to. And this was our STEM Academy that we had started. And one of the benefits of that, besides the fact that it increases the school ranking with all of the different surveys that go out there, but it also will provide the district Perkins money. So we will now be eligible for Perkins money. Another huge accomplishment was the Shield by Literacy, and that is being awarded to graduating high school students who have demonstrated proficiency in 2 or more languages. So that is as part of their transcripts. We've improved access for all by permitting the SMS students to actually bring their Chromebooks home. So as everyone knows, we are one-to-one in the middle school, and previously they were not allowed to bring them home, but now they are. We've empowered the SMS students by allowing them to select electives. That was a huge undertaking that was multiple years in the making. And we've been able to improve the SMS schedule, the procedures, and the school climate as a result. So now we're going to move on to our enhancements of our academic programs. So these enhancements are, as I said before, what we intend to accomplish in the 2021 budget. And you'll notice that there's some words that are in red, and these are to point you back to our budget goals. So it's tying each one of these into some of our budget goals. So the first one is to further expand our peer-to-peer opportunities. That's part of the equity. The second one is provide professor and resident teaching support. We are very big into professional development and supporting our teaching staff. So this is an awesome way of doing that. We're going to be starting and supporting our Tomorrow Teachers Academy, which is our educational academy that we're launching for September. And we're going to be offering professional development and support in a multitude of areas, of which include mathematics, writing, our equity team, and our foundations. And one thing I think that's important to note is that when we had the equity audit done, it was actually shared with us that many districts do an equity audit, but not many districts do anything with the audit itself. And, as soon as we got the report, we immediately started working on it. We formed equity teams in each of the buildings, as well as a district-wide one. So we are full force into this. And as a result, we're working to remove barriers to student learning opportunities. Other enhancements, will be adding 4 new courses at the high school level: AP Research, AP Computer Science Principles, and AP Environmental Science, along with the Tomorrow Teachers course, which will be part of the academy. We're also going to be bringing in new Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 textbooks. And we're always rewriting curriculum, we're always updating it, but we're really focusing on the middle school curriculum for the elective courses. And lastly, we're going to solidify the Vanderveer schedules to ensure social studies and science are taught consistently. Now, these are not all of our enhancements, but these are ones that we really wanted to highlight for you tonight. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Boyce.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tehan. This is Brian Boyce again. One comment before we leave Dr. Tehan's last slide is we do not consider additional funds as a requirement for program enhancements. Many times we are able to enhance programs with little or no money. And in the case of that CTE program Dr. Tehan talked about, we were actually be able to generate grant money. Moving on to our first detailed financial slide. Just to go over how it's organized on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see cost centers for different categories of expenses. We have the revised 1920 budget, that's this school year, what we're proposing for the 2021 school year, and the change in dollars and percentage. Going down the right-hand side of the page, if you look at the increases, the first one that really pops out at you is the outside placement tuition. That increase is attributable to an additional 3 students projected for out-of-district schools. It also reflects an increase in the tuition rates for those out-of-district schools. Continuing down the page on the right-hand side, we have a 6.2% in other, but that's only $23,000. If we go to support, is the next item or the next number that would pop out at you as an increase. A portion of that increase is due to a new child study team member at the high school slated for next year. Administration is fairly level. Sometimes positions in the district change based on responsibilities. So if you took the support and the administration lines together they're increasing 2.5% with that new position included. Going down the line, operation maintenance, not an unusual increase. Transportation is a little high though, and there's a direct correlation between our increased transportation cost and that out-of-district placements that I talked about earlier. Employee benefits is a higher than average increase for us, and that is attributable to higher than average claims data this past year. And we're going to talk more about that in the next 2 slides. Just everybody's attention to the fact that there's a subtotal there and it's called current expense. Think of that as the operating budget, your recurring expenses that happen every year. Below that, we get into capital projects. For capital projects, that $1.9 million includes $93,000 of interactive boards at the high school. It includes 4 capital projects that I'm going to go over later. It also includes a $125,000 deposit to capital reserve for the purpose of replacement of synthetic turf. We now have 3 synthetic turf fields. They have an approximate useful life of 12 years, so we have to plan for the replacement of them. We did just replace field 1 a year ago, and we're coming up on a replacement for field 2, probably within the next year or 2. The next 2 slides, I'm going to focus on, let's see. This number right here, and then the slide after, I'm going to focus in on this number. So if we take this 43.87 million and we analyze it differently than the cost centers you see on this screen, it's also useful information for the people watching this presentation. So that current expense number, if you look at it in a different breakdown, it's 63% salaries, 14% health benefits. That's 77% of our general fund budget with salaries and health benefits. Other employee benefits include things like tuition reimbursement, board portion of Social Security, board portion of pension bills, unemployment, things like that. But I wanted to separate out the health benefits from the other employee benefits because health benefits is a bigger story this year. 4% is for the outside tuition placements I mentioned, and all of the other operating expenses in our district represents 15%. That includes supplies, textbooks, contracted services, heat and electricity, and technology devices. This slide analyzes that $1.876 million of current expense increase. Of that $1.876 million, 36% of that increase is going towards salaries. 46% is going to benefits, and that's primarily due to our higher than average increase in health benefits for this year that we do not normally see. Tuition, a 10% increase in tuition, which makes sense given the increase I talked about with the additional 3 projected students, and then all the other expenses is 8% of that increase in current expense. On to capital projects. This is an aerial view of Vanderveer School, as you can see. This is how we track roof replacements in the district. We have one of these for each school. Each roof section is analyzed for its anticipated replacement date, and then we schedule accordingly. So for next year, we are looking at sections A1, A2, and A3 to be replaced at Vanderveer School. Next capital project is roof replacement at the high school. At the high school, we're looking at replacing roof sections J and K. For those who've watched the presentation last year, you'll remember that included in this year's budget, the 1920 budget, we are replacing roof sections A, B, and C at the high school. That contract has already been awarded, and work will start as soon as school is out for the year. Last 2 capital projects. One is just the professional fees related to the replacement of the track. The actual construction cost for the replacement of the track will be the following budget. But for next year, we're going to go ahead, get specifications done, all the professional work that's needed in order to have the construction happen, so that in the summer of 2021, we can immediately start a track replacement project. One of the weaknesses we have in our athletic facilities is in the spring. So in order to chip away at some of that weakness that we are dealing with fields for the spring, we're looking to chip away at that and improve one baseball field that's pictured here that actually is at Vanderveer School. This is presented for taxpayers who want a sense of how this district is spending. One of the better ways you can get a sense of that is through comparison. Is the district's spending level correct? On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the categories that the state comes up with. They come up with these categories, they print them, and they make them available for taxpayers in something called a taxpayer guide to education spending. It's generated by the Department of Education. It's independent. It's not generated by anybody at the Somerville School District. And it's also based on audited financial reports. So these are all the categories they use: state average K-12, state median K-12, state average all operating types, and state median all operating types. What I did is took the 4 districts that are in a grouping, because this document is grouped into districts of like size and configuration. So all the Somerset County K-12 districts are listed there. And if we go to the 17-18 column on the far right, you can see Somerville's down at the bottom at $15,065 as a per pupil spending. So the budgetary per pupil uses cost that is considered comparable across all school districts. So it's designed to be comparable. Somerville at $15,065 for the 17-18 school year. This is the last audited school year. If you start up at the top, you'll see that the state average K-12 is $15,641. We're a little bit below that. We're a little bit below the state median K-12. We're also below the $15,809 for state average all operating types. We're below the $15,603. We're also below Somerset Hills. We are not below North Plainfield. We are just above them. And we are below, we are above Bound Brook. Bound Brook just came into this category in 15-16, and they are noticeably lower than the rest of these numbers. And if you went and you looked at this 15,065 and you actually looked at the 16-17 school year, you can see that our 15,065 is actually lower than a lot of the numbers you see in the year prior. And that trend continues all the way across this slide to the left. I'm not going to read each column to you, but I think everyone gets the idea. The 16,890 for Somerset Hills isn't necessarily a wrong number or a bad number, just like Bound Brook number isn't exactly a good number or isn't necessarily a good number or a bad number. Those are the numbers that are right for those districts. This slide is just meant to give the reader a sense of how we spend comparatively. And by looking at this, you can see that we're right about at the average, even slightly below of the state categories on the slide. This is the same information in a bar chart. You can see Somerville is the orange line that goes across the screen, that's staying consistently below all of the different categories the state has, and some of our Somerset County counterparts, except when we get to 17-18, where North Plainfield is slightly below us and Bound Brook is consistently below everybody. Okay. Our next detailed financial slide, general fund revenues. The first line, general fund revenue, is the line that is capped at 2% plus any banked cap. We are using banked cap, and I'm going to review that and what that means in the next slide. That increase should not be confused with the increase in the school tax rate, though. Tuition, except for $40,000 in both columns, the 1920 and the 21 column, all of that tuition is from Branchburg. Part of that increase that's perhaps higher than you Branchburg people would like to see is attributable to the health benefits increase we're seeing, and also that additional child study team member at the high school. Next line down is state aid. Without getting into the complexity of the school funding formula, I will mention that Senate Bill S2 or S2 passed in 2018, which eliminates just adjustment aid over 7 years. Simply, it shifts aid away from districts who are considered overfunded, and it shifts it to those districts that are considered underfunded, as defined by the school funding formula. We are considered an underfunded district, and as such, we are the beneficiary of a higher than normal increase in state aid, which has been a big help to us this year, considering some of the increases we've faced in the area of health benefits. Fund balance is a number which is, the district relies on $1.2 million of fund balance to balance our budget each year. That is the amount we can reasonably expect to regenerate each year, and that's what we do. That's what we rely on to fund current operating expenses. If we happen to end up with more surplus in a year that's used in a future year's budget, let's say 1.4 million, we won't use all of the 1.4 million to pay for operating expenses. We would take the $200,000 extra that we don't normally see and put that towards a capital project, which helps us keep our capital costs down and helps us keeps us away from referendums. We have a little bit of miscellaneous, and we have a withdrawal from capital reserves, which is where we have savings set aside to be able to fund those capital projects I talked about a few slides ago. Banked cap is just for everybody's understanding of what exactly banked cap means. We are allowed to increase the general fund tax levy 2%. If we do not increase the general fund tax levy 2%, we are allowed to save the amount we did not use, save the ability to increase future tax levies for 3 additional years. If we do not use that savings of tax cap room, we will lose it. So if you go back to the inception of the banked cap in 11-12, we generated, or in other words, we were $242,805 under the 2%, but we didn't use it, so it expired. The next year, $249,000, same thing. We didn't use it, so it expired. We generated bank cap in the next year and even the next year. We did use some in 16-17 and we used some in 17-18. Next couple of years, we did not generate any bank cap. We generated some in 18-19, but here's where we generated a lot last year, $353,000 in this year's budget, the 2019-20 budget. We are looking to use 106,000 of that, plus the 74,000 we generated in 18-19 to get us through this year. We can still do this and achieve that less than 1% tax rate that I mentioned on the first slide. But it is an indication of the Board of Ed exercising restraint by not raising taxes to the legally permissible cap when we can do it. Debt service, it's important to mention debt service because there is a tax levy included in the debt service fund. As you can see here, the last time we incurred debt was in 2005. And as you can see, it's been steadily decreasing as we're paying off for debt. We're down, we were at 32 million in 2005. We're down to just below 11 million at the end of this year, which is something to be proud of. We've been getting capital projects done in our annual budgets. Therefore, we have not been doing referendums, and we've been just paying down debt all along. And we're actually in striking range of paying off debt. In another 10 years, we'll be actually debt free. And that's a goal of ours. Long-term planning, and I want to touch on this even though it doesn't, not all of the information on the slide is specific to 2021 because it is really important for our overall financial picture. We want to be stable in this district, stable with programs and stable with property taxes. We want our programs to be stable and steadily improving. Dr. Tehan mentioned in his slides that all existing programs were staying. Plus, he mentioned academic enhancements that we can accomplish in 2021. That's the way we want to operate: steady, slow, and steady improvement. When we talk about stability with property taxes, that doesn't necessarily mean flat, but it means as close to that as we can get and with no spikes. There's two areas in which we really look at long-term planning. One is in the operating budget, and it has to do with technology. Technology is such an exploding cost in the past 15 years that in order for us to manage it properly so that we don't come upon a year when we have so much need in terms of student devices or interactive boards, we developed a 5-year rolling technology refresh schedule. And I have to credit Melissa McEntee, our Director of Technology, for maintaining this. It's not easy to manage that many devices and actually project out on a rolling 5-year basis how much it will cost us to replace those devices when they're at the end of their useful life. But as you can see here, when we take all of our technology items and we plot them out over 5 years, the goal is to keep it relatively level over those 5 years so that we don't have a year that's $100,000 and the next year that's $400,000 and we have no way to come up with that additional $300,000. We have about $400,000 to $430,000 in our base budget that we can put towards these things and reasonably expect to replace them all at the end of their useful life. The next area where we do some long-term planning is in the area of capital. Building space, adequate space, building systems such as roofs, windows, HVAC, athletic facilities, which we talked about, and technology infrastructure, which is the backbone of the technology department, the closets with the servers and so forth. There are some big ticket items in there, and that's another cost of technology. The targeted project for the next 5 years for us is the track that I mentioned earlier, more Vanderveer school roofs, middle school roofs, more high school roofs, and the replacement of Field 2 turf. There are others, but those are the projects that we're targeting for the next 5 years. And right now we have the funds right now to complete those projects. Property tax impact, this is where we get to the less than 1% that I mentioned in the first slide. Our school tax levy is up on a calendar year basis by 1.85%. We enjoyed a little bit of an increase in ratables, but when you factor in the low 1920 school budget converted to a calendar year and the 2021 school budget converted to a calendar year, we actually have a school tax rate of less than 1% for 2020 based on this proposed budget. That's it for me, Mr. Jess.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Dr. Tian, at this time, do any members of the board have any questions with regards to the fiscal year 21 budget? No? All right, then I'll ask Dr. Tian to please continue.
And Mr. Boyce, in the meantime, you can stop presenting. We're going to start with highlights. VDV grades PS5. The teachers and staff of Vanderveer are continuing to celebrate VDV Pride through virtual Spirit Weeks. These theme days are being celebrated and shared by posting pictures and videos. They have included hat days, pajama days, school spirit wear days, healthy exercise days, and the most recent Spirit Week theme is Earth Day. This is surrounding the nationally recognized Earth Day on April 22nd. And if you want to keep on top of that, you can keep reading the Friday blast that we send out to all families, or you can check it out on Twitter because they're constantly posting it. The Scholastic Book Fair will be held virtually this year and began on April 20th, and that will extend through Sunday, May 3rd. You can shop at bookfairs.scholastic.com, and you enter the location for Vanderveer School, and all books will be shipped right to your home, sales tax free. And any book orders of $25 or more will receive free shipping. And we miss all the students and their families and want everyone to remain safe, healthy, and positive throughout the flexible learning days. For Somerville Middle School, Mr. Benjamin and Mr. Zubia were notified that Somerville Middle School is a valued Pennies for Patients partner for support of blood cancer patients in New Jersey through the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. SMS has been invited to this year's end of the year celebration, which will be a virtual celebration. Mr. Benjamin and Mr. Zubia will join other schools across New Jersey in celebrating a job well done in raising funds for this initiative. SMS Counseling Department with Dr. Stroh and Mrs. Badawi have been regularly providing updates to the services and resources available to parents needing counseling and or mental health support, and information can be found on the SMS website. Furthermore, you can also go to any of the different schools' websites, and there's a counseling corner that's located there with resources for parents. For Somerville High School, SHS students and staff participated in Spirit Friday throughout March and April. Pioneers showed their Ville pride by taking pictures while flexible learning. Robotics Team 102 announced that Drive Captain and student executive Emily Vogel had successfully progressed to being named a semi-finalist in the first Mid-Atlantic District Dean's List. Emily is one of 14 students out of 70 that were interviewed to move on in the first Mid-Atlantic. Wishing you the future success, Emily. The Peer-to-Peer Club virtually promoted World Autism Awareness Day on April 2nd by wearing blue. And the Yearbook Club is working hard to complete the 2019-2020 yearbook. The club is collecting pictures of students and staff during the time at home. And that concludes district highlights.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Tian. Moving on to report of board items and committee reports, we'll turn it over to Mr. Carlson to please move the finance items.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, before I start, I just wanted to mention a couple things. COVID-19 will bring changes in state aid. We're anticipating, but to date, we have not received any hard information. So as soon as we do, we'll act on them. I want to thank Dr. Tehan and Brian Boyce for putting together some actual plans in working on various scenarios that may or may not occur. But they're being very proactive, and it's nice to be able to do that. As soon as we have any hard information, the finance committee will meet and we'll get together. And also, while our buildings are closed, the expense occurred in the physical running of our buildings is a very small portion of our operating budget. All right, a small portion of our budget overall. All right, staff and teachers are still being paid. Mortgages and loans are still due. Capital projects, which are part of the long-term planning, such as roof and field replacements, are not luxuries, and they need to be done. All right, we realize the post-COVID-19 financial picture may look different, but I believe it is important that we don't see the closing of our schools as a huge financial windfall for our schools and a huge financial windfall for our budget. Okay, that being said, moving on to be it resolved that the Board of Education accept the board secretary's reports listed below: Treasury's report, secretary's report, investments, and food services. It is recommended that I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. It is recommended that items 1 through 6 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of school. Number 1, board secretary financial report. Number 2, acceptance of monthly reports. Number 3, payroll. Number 4, bills list. Number 5, line item transfers. And number 6, disposal of obsolete materials.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Carlson, for the motion. May we have a second on that, please?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sadin. Any discussion on those items? Mr. Boyce, roll call, please.
Miss Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Olson. There a thumbs up for Ms. Olson?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Puntillo,
Yes.
Dr. Sadin,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Sergio,
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Okay, it's recommended that item 7 through 13 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. 7, bills list. 8, approval of tentative school budget, school district budget for 2020 on. And
Why is my thing on?
contact authorization for Clear Touch and Interactive. Maybe something happens with this. And custodian competitive contract. This is already done. And it looks like we're having a little issue. I guess the board packet for that I'm looking at. You know, it says April 2028. Has anybody else seen that the agenda has changed?
Mr. Boyce, would you lend a hand with the items for finance, please?
Sure. I just want to clarify that the first motion that Mr. Carlson did was for numbers 1 through 5. Okay, that would be board secretary's financial reports, acceptance of monthly reports, payroll, bills list, and line item transfers. So the next motion that will ask, or the next group of resolutions will ask for a motion will be the bills list for the high school and district-wide. It will be the New Jersey Schools Insurance Group Safety Grant Application Award Resolution. It'll be number 8, the adoption of the 2021 school district budget. And number 9, travel expenditure resolution.
Thank
So,
you.
a motion for those, please.
So moved.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jess, if I did that, that was your thing. I missed too
That's
many.
all right. No worries. I'll ask Mr. Carlson if he would like to move those as chair of finance.
Yeah, so moved.
All right. Can we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Puntillo. Any discussion? Mr. Boyce, roll call, please.
It's Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yeah.
Mrs. Olson. Do we see a thumbs up for Mrs. Olson?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Puntillo,
Yes.
Dr. Staden,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Sergio,
Yes.
Mr. Jess,
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And Mr. Carlson, thanks very much for your comments. They were right on the money and very much appreciated. So thank you very much, especially for all the work you've been doing with Mr. Boyce and Mr. Tian and the Finance Committee as well. Moving right along, Buildings and Grounds Committee, Mr. Puntillo.
Yes, staff are doing sanitizing of all the buildings, and all work orders are being handled appropriately.
Great. Thank you. Moving right along, COVID-19 can't stop this gentleman from his monthly report, and so we turn it over to our very own Mr. Sergio, Athletics and Student Activities.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I guess before I start, can everybody hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. And I'll first start off by, again, reiterating everybody's comments. Good evening to all of my Bill subjects, and I am wishing you, your families, and the community all the best in health and safety, especially during this troubling time. I'm going to start off by the report by basically saying that there is no update from the NJSIAA as far as what they are going to do with the season. They can't make an announcement until they get certain mandates from the governor or the state government, but they are putting all contingencies in place. So we appreciate everyone's patience, and hopefully they will be able to resolve the spring season one way, shape, or form. What I'll also do is I'm going to go into all of our high school college-bound athletes. First, I'm going to start off with our baseball hurler, Gavin Stepflug, who's going to the University of Maryland, and they are going to fear the turtle there. Evan Barr, the netminder, is going to Duke University for lacrosse. Katie Merchant, uniquely enough, is going to Southern Methodist University for equestrian. Okay, and we do have one proud father on our Board of Education. Okay, he is our president. Kaylee Jess will be clearing the hurdles at Sacred Heart University in Connecticut. Ethan Hillman will be playing at ASA College in Brooklyn for football. So will Kyrie Hinton. Will McIntyre will be playing football at Gettysburg College. Noah Irwin at Santa Maria College. And then for football and lacrosse, Patrick Peluso will be playing at Montclair State University. Otto Cornish will be playing football at Montclair as well. Going to the other football, soccer, that's Jenna Potts will be playing at Shenandoah. Kiara Morales will be playing at Moravian. And Abby Umpenhauer will be playing at the Rochester Institute of Technology at RIT. Melina Christodoulou will be doing track and tennis at Drew University. Jillian Reinhardt will be swimming at Stevens Institute of Technology. Wellington Ardila Jr. will be playing lax at King's College. So Jack Clear will be playing at Elizabethtown. Joey Farino at Moravian. Nolan Quaid at Stevens Institute of Technology. Tommy Ulmer at Moravian. Julian Verona at Cabrini University. And playing hoops at Ramapo College will be Riley Sheely. Okay, other special comments is we do have two other proud Board of Ed parents because the notorious Nate of House Kimmick and Brianna of House Fabrici will be pursuing their passion of the trumpet and piano, respectively, at Mason Gross School of Music at Rutgers University. I look forward to seeing them performing and representing Bill Music. Okay, other congratulations go to award recipients. Number one, the 2020 Skyline Conference Scholar Athlete Award winners go to netminder and basketball phenom Evan Barr, and the triple threat in tennis, swimming, and track, Melina Christodoulou. Evan Barr also received the 2020 Somerset County Scholar Athlete Award along with another triple threat in Abby Umpenhauer for football, basketball, and golf. Okay, and Dr. Tina, as you so mentioned, the Gearheads Team 102 in Somerville is proud to announce that Emily Vogel was named the finalist in the First Mid-Atlantic District, and we are very proud of her as well. So that is my report, but before I end, I just want to say to our seniors, senior athletes, and club participants, you guys have dedicated your entire high school career in building your character by following your dreams, desires, and passions. And the way you are conducting yourselves during this time is just a testament, to the strength of our teams, clubs, and activities. Please stay safe, and you will always be state champs in our book. And that's how we live. Hashtag go by example. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Sergio. One thing I will add is through the state association that Mr. Boyce and I belong to, New Jersey ASBA, we heard that NJSIAA had originally thought about allowing students to participate in their sports over the summer, but there wasn't a lot of traction for that, no pun intended. And so now what they're talking about is the potential to extend the eligibility for the current juniors and sophomores into next year, giving them one additional year of eligibility. But in order for them to do that, they would have to enroll in their local county college as a non-matriculated student and take classes. So in the next couple of years, we'll see. I don't know if that's gonna fly or not, but that's what we've been hearing. And as always, an entertaining report. And now I realize that we are all your subjects. So we'd like to thank you so much for being our king, if you will. So hats off to you, Mr. Sergio.
You can blame
Moving
my
right
wife.
along to curriculum committee, we will turn it over to Mrs. Van Horn.
Hi, everyone. Curriculum Committee last met on March 17th. And because of the timing of that meeting, the meeting really turned to just a complete discussion of virtual learning and how it was going to occur. We pretty much tabled everything else to the current meeting that we had today, which I'm not ready to report on. I would like to recommend that items 1 and 2 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Number 1, harassment, intimidation, and bullying report, an unconfirmed report at the middle school. Number 2, approval of a new course at Somerville Middle School. That would be a newly created asynchronous algebra readiness course for grades 6 to 8 at the middle school.
Thank you for the motion, Ms. Van Horn. May we have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sadin. Any discussion? Mr. Boyce, roll call, please.
Miss Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Olson.
Yes.
A thumbs up. Mr. Puntillo,
Yes.
Dr. Sadin,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Sergio,
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would recommend that the items 3 through 8 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Number 3, the Apex Credit Recovery Program. Number 4, the partnership between Somerville High School and Teens Connect. Number 5, the approval of the new courses at Somerville High School for next year. Number 6, approval of programs for use during virtual learning. And number 7, Somerville Public Schools Flexible Learning Plan for 2019-2020. Did I miss one?
No.
I do not believe so.
Okay, so it's 3 through 7 then.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Van Horn. May we have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Any discussion? Can we have a roll call, Mr. Boyce?
Yes. Miss Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Olson. I'll assume that's a yes. Mr. Puntillo,
Yes.
Dr. Sadin,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn, Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Sergio,
Yes.
Mr. Jess,
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
She mouthed yes. It didn't come through.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to technology, Mr. Kimmick.
Just an update provided by Ms. McAtee for the purposes of the meeting. I just want to, again, echo what everybody else is saying in terms of the work that was done, especially around the planning of the flexible learning plan and the implementation of that I know has just been a tremendous effort in terms of making sure that students are outfitted with technology. It's enough to do that when they're in school and we can easily track everybody, but when we start having to send devices home that weren't intended to be sent home, a lot of effort went around that. And then I think the public should also be aware of things like Wi-Fi access, that the district had to work very, very hard to make sure that all students have access to Wi-Fi at home so they can use the technology appropriately at home. Again, the level of support that has been provided for the community in terms of when there's issues with devices and have options to be able to call in, to be able to get support with devices. I think that entire department should be commended for the work that they've been doing behind the scenes. And when things work well, people don't know all the time who's doing all the work behind the scenes. And I think that's a compliment to them, because a lot of times people don't recognize who they are, but they're working diligently day in and day out to make sure that flexible instruction can take place and that distance learning can take place. And I also want to compliment just the members of the technology department, but also members of curriculum and just the entire administration, and just the I think methodical way that they've gone about addressing the issues that have come up across the distance learning spectrum. It's a very, very complex thing to do, and I think that it's something, again, that the district has taken a very, very I think comprehensive approach in terms of training and comprehensive approach in terms of supports for families to make sure that everybody can access the learning that is necessary to take place during this time. So just kudos to everybody and a great job, and keep up great work.
Thanks, Mr. Kimmick, and I agree with you 100%. Kudos to Ms. McAtee, Mr. Kaiser, everybody in technology, and the administration. Moving on, personnel, Dr. Tian.
Okay, it's really short today. So resolved that the Board of Education approve and or accept the superintendent of schools recommendations as follows. Appointments and salaries contingent upon verified documentation. Number 1, to accept the resignation of Maddie Hodison from the position of part-time instructional assistant at Somerville Middle School, and that was effective April 22nd.
May we have a motion on that item, please?
Moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Pontillo. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Was that Mr. Carlson? Thank you.
Jeez.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call, Mr. Boyce?
Yes, Miss Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Olson. Thumbs up.
Gave you the thumbs up.
Okay, good. Mr. Pontillo,
Yes.
Dr. Staten,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Sergio,
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Okay, for 9 through 12 and district-wide, resolved that the Board of Education approve and or accept the superintendent of schools recommendations as follows. Appointments and salaries contingent upon verified documentation. Number 2, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals for curriculum writing for stage 3, algebra 1. And number 3 to approve the appointment of Andrew Flanagan to the position of substitute teacher for the 1920 school year. And number 4, to approve the attached revised job description.
Thank you. Can we have a motion for that item, those items, please?
Moved.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Saden. Any discussion? Can we have a roll call, Mr. Boyce, please?
Yes, Miss Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Olson. Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Pontillo,
Yes.
Dr. Saden,
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Sergio,
Yes.
Mr. Jess,
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to old business. Is there any old business?
Well, yes. I would love to think that it's getting older by the minute, but I also would like a chance to echo my deepest appreciation to the teachers, the custodians, the folks who are feeding the children of our school district, the administration for their work supporting the teachers not only for trying to reach out and support all of their students, but they're probably, many of them, teaching their own children. And finally, I really need to give a shout out to the parents who have unwittingly become teachers and are struggling, because I can tell you that my high school student is not really interested in me being his teacher at all. So I appreciate the challenges. I appreciate the support that the parents are getting from the teachers, particularly in Vanderveer and the middle school. Dr. Tehan, I can't say enough about how I look forward to your Friday letters, and I feel very up to date, and I feel that I understand as a parent in this district your challenges and your successes as we move into this uncharted territory.
Thank you, Dr. Saden. Well said, and I agree. And I hopefully this will give all the parents a new appreciation for what the teachers are doing for their kids.
Yep.
Anyone else? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close old business, please?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you, Dr. Saden. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any discussion? We're just going to go all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. Moving on to new business. Does anybody have any new business? No. All right, then. May we have a motion to close new business, please?
So moved.
Moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Horn. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Matthews. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. All right, we are now open to the public regarding any item that they would like to discuss. I will reiterate, in case people have joined us lately, that due to the state of emergencies in the state of New Jersey and the federal nationwide, we are doing our meetings remotely, and as such, public participation will still be heard. However, we ask that you submit your comments through the link on the main page of the Board of Education website, which is above the live stream, and Mrs. McEntee will take your comments, your questions, and will then read them to the board. And please remember that during the public portion, your question may not be answered at this time to allow the right person to get the information for you.
Thank you. And we have 2 comments coming in, but before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to the board for your support and for all the kind words. None of this would have been possible without your support over the years. So thank you all. We have a comment that came in from Mr. Granville Brady, 9 Leeway in Somerville. He wrote, "What staffing cuts has the BOE made since schools have been closed? What non-instructional and or non-academic positions have been furloughed while the COVID-19 pandemic is in effect? Example, coaches, aides, psychologists, art teachers, music teachers, child study team, administrators, etc."
All right, thank you. You may go on to the next question, Ms. McEntee.
Okay, we have one more comment, and this is coming from Mr. Pat Frayne, 201 Scobie Lane, Somerset, New Jersey. And he wrote, "All board meetings from now on should be done in real time as well as in person when that can start again."
Any other comments, Ms. McEntee?
That's all we have.
That's all we have, right? Mr. Frayne, Mr. Brady, thank you so much for your comments. The response to Mr. Brady's question will come from Dr. Tian and Mr. Boyce once they have adequate information to provide you with the answers. Please remember that the Department of Education, while still providing guidance to school districts, still does not have all the answers. And as our assemblymen and senators continue to pass bills to help the public, sometimes those bills are not complete with the rationale as to why certain things are being done. And as such, it requires additional information that the board may need to get from their attorney. So we ask that you please bear with us as our administration continues to do the great job that they're doing and continues to get those answers, which won't only affect us at this time, but will affect us well into our next school year as well. There being no other public, may we have a motion to close the public session, please?
Mr. Jess, we just received
Oh.
one. I'm sorry.
Hold on.
We have one final one. Sorry.
That's okay.
Dr. Jason Kraska of 106 Vanderveer Ave in Somerville asks, "Was the budget available to the public for review online before the vote and adoption?"
Thank you, Mr. Kraska. Mr. Boyce, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, the answer is yes. The user budget was posted on the website last week. In addition to that, the meeting was advertised and with a notice that the budget was available for inspection.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Now may I ask for a motion to close the public portion, please?
So moved.
Thank you,
moved.
Dr. Saden. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Kimmick. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? So moved. Ah, we can see Mrs. Van Horn. Hello. All right, so moving on. Be it resolved that the Board of Education move recess into executive session to discuss a grievance and negotiations with the Somerville Education Association. The minutes of the executive session, to the extent permitted by law, will be made available to the public once the issues are resolved, subject to confidentiality requirements. May I have a motion to go into executive session, please?
So
So
moved.
Thank you, Mr. Shurgil. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. We are into executive session at 7:40 p.m. Thank you.